I tipped $20. So then I go to work.
We're prepared to start. The clock back there is a little slow. Before we begin our meeting, would you please join with us as Mr. Thompson leads us in prayer?
Father, we're grateful and appreciative of the seniors that have graduated and pray your blessing on them as they move forward with their lives. Thank you for their time here in Franklin Schools. Pray for our teachers and students as they take some time off. Give them a time of refreshing and vacation in the summer. And pray for our support staff who's going to work really hard over the summer to make sure that our facilities look great as they always are. Thank you for all that they do. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Okay, we begin our meeting this evening, and the first item on the agenda is for public and board comments. First, from the public for comments on anything, any item that's on the board agenda. Is there any?
Hi, everyone. My name's Christy Norton. I have a second grader here at Franklin at Creekside, and I'm mostly here just to listen. I've never been to a school board meeting before, but my concern while I'm here is safety. Obviously, this is the 23rd school shooting that's happened this year, most recently in Noblesville. So I guess not here to complain. I just want to know as a parent what I can do to help. If it's a funding issue, I have some ideas. I'm a mental health nurse, just kind of talking to students more and assessing them. I don't know how often that's being done. I don't know. I don't really have like anything specific to say, just more questions of what's being done and what I can do to help.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Clendenning. Do you want to?
Yeah, I will address it towards the end, but
okay.
I will have a couple comments.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes. So the board received this electronically and paper-wise. This is our ever-living document for our GO bond. We look forward to continuing to work with that. So if there's any feedback on that, feel free to let us know. We'll try to keep it in electronic format because it's an ever-changing document as we get quotes in. As Mr. Sewell and I work through that document, we will continue to keep that up to date. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, for the board.
Damien,
Sorry.
I have a quick adjustment to the agenda. I received an email today from Vectren. They do not need the easement any longer, so we'll remove that from the discussion items. Evidently, they've got to the point where they were ready to proceed and they were able to direct the gas line through an existing city easement. So,
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? Okay, then for the board comments, Music Council.
We've not met.
Okay, Athletic Council.
We have not met.
Legislative Council.
We have not met.
Superintendent Strategic Task Force.
No report.
Superintendent Strategic Plan Projects.
We have a couple of projects that we're moving on, actually multiple subcommittees. The Employer of Choice has convened for the summer. There is some work going on, but we'll restart in August. And next month, just a plug ahead of time, the Student Innovation Grant, which is our version of the Student 10X Grant, which actually Christy and I serve on, will be here to present in July, kind of where we're headed for the jump start of the school year. We intend to get that going in the fall.
Okay, thank you. Communication Committee.
We met at the end of the school year and just kind of looked over the thought exchange program that we have going and just talked about strategies that we can use it for in the future.
Okay, thank you. Collective bargaining.
We did meet, I don't know if it was last month, just to kind of run some numbers and look at it. So.
Okay, thank you. Citro 9, there was really nothing new to report. It was a very quick meeting. RDC, same way, it was nothing that had anything to do with the schools. Next item is for the consent agenda. Move to approve. It's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, under superintendent reports, the GO bond, Mr. Mercer.
Thank you. Over the past couple of months, we've had a series of conversations relative to a general obligation bond. We were here last month, had a conversation at that time, and shared with you the preliminary look at some of the projects which could be housed within that general obligation bond. I just wanted to touch on a couple of items, more for probably the public than it is for the board. We've issued 3 general obligation bonds in the time that I've been here, 2012, 14, and 16. At that time, the statutory limit on that was $2 million. Tonight, we're in front of you, and I am joined by our financial advisors and our legal representative in Ice Miller, Bellevue Gray, Jason Tanzel from Umbar here, Eric Long from Ice Miller, and they'll be coming up in just a minute to offer some words and answer questions. But the bottom line is, over the past 8 years, we have lost well over $12 million in capital projects dollars alone. And that has necessitated us periodically in borrowing money to complete tasks and repairs, purchases, so forth, just to keep pace with where we really should be. And so in the past 6 years, we've come to you every 2 years and asked for some assistance, and we're, of course, back doing that again at this time. I think everything that you'll find on the list that Matt and Jeff provided you tonight are items that are either serious need or items that we believe are needed in classrooms and would have been done otherwise had we had capital projects money to work with, and we just didn't and don't. And so when you're taking $1.3 million a year, $1.5 million a year out, it makes it very, very difficult. So anyway, we're here tonight to discuss a general obligation bond. There are a variety of things that we need to take a look at this evening, and the first of those, and please stop us as we get going if you need to, with questions. The first thing that we'd like to do is ask Bellevue and or Jason to come up and talk to you a little bit about the GO bond and the financing and a little bit of history on our debt service.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Good evening, Dr. Clendenning, members of the board. My name is Bellevue Gray, and I'm with H.J. Umbaugh Associates, and we've been working with the school corporation to help put together financing options for this proposed bond. So this evening, I'm going to walk through the financing that is being proposed. There we go. Okay. This first slide here, it's actually you can probably kind of see it. I'll go on to the next slide because it provides it in more picture format. But this represents all of the school corporation's outstanding indebtedness. And you can see here that the school corporation has total payments of about $14.8 million. Beginning in 2019, those payments will go down to about $14.6 million. And so with that bit of capacity, that's where we're looking at fitting in this general obligation bond and keeping the school corporation's levy at current levels. So that's shown here on this slide. You can see the school corporation we're showing their outstanding indebtedness from 2017. And as the school corporation's debt currently stands, will be fully repaid in 2029. You have the kind of debt structure that we like to see as your municipal advisor, because you have kind of gentle slopes downward. So that really creates capacity for the school corporation to be considering additional projects, in light of what Mr. Mercer said about tax cap losses and not having those dollars available for capital projects on an annual basis. Most school corporations in the state of Indiana have moved toward issuing bonds on a semi-frequent basis in order to help with facility-wide needs. We're anticipating that this particular bond issue would be issued as a general obligation bond. And so that means that the debt would be issued in the school corporation's name, and every taxing unit within the state of Indiana has its own debt limit. And that calculation is found here on this slide. It's basically the most recent net assessed valuation of the school divided by 3 and multiplied by 2. Those are statutory and constitutional limits. And then you deduct from that any outstanding indebtedness prior to the time of issuance. So based upon debt that will be repaid and will be set aside for future payments, the school corporation will have about $5.1 million of capacity. So the expected issuance of $5 million would fit within that. Of the $5 million, we're currently estimating that a little under $4.9 million would be available for the project hard and soft construction costs. The remaining $125,000 would be available for the underwriter's discount, which is basically the fee for the purchaser of the bonds, the ultimate purchaser of the bonds, and then the remaining dollars are for other costs of issuance. These are only estimates, so to the extent that there are additional dollars available, those would go for additional construction costs. And then finally, putting it all together, the green bars represent the school corporation's current indebtedness, and then the yellow bars represent the proposed bonds. We're looking at a repayment of about 6 years, and we've estimated interest rates for purposes of this presentation at about 0.5% higher than current rates. So we've used about a 3.2% interest rate for the purposes of structuring this, but interest rates are, based on today's rates, are about 0.5% lower than that. And so based on that, you can see the yellow bars are pretty tiny there, but the way that we structured this is that it's fitting within your current debt structure. And you can also see that based upon the structure that we've proposed, we're still showing additional capacity beginning in 2023 as well. So again, that's creating some additional flexibility there for the school corporation. That's all I have on the financing. If there are any questions from the board at this time.
The question I have is, if I understood what you just said correctly, is that if we do this time, that we really wouldn't be able to do another one till about 2023?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, one of the conversations that we've been having is, Franklin's in a situation where it's blessed with growing assessed valuation. So there are a couple of different strategies, because oftentimes what we talk with folks about is one of levy management. This is showing where the payments are, which is just under $15 million. But in areas where there is still growth within the tax base, you can look at a tax rate management perspective. So you're able to potentially levy a little bit more and still keep the rate at the same level. So that's something that, for purposes of this, we're structuring it based upon what we know today. But if the school corporation comes back and has needs in the next year, next couple of years, there are a couple of ways that we can structure those bonds. The other piece that's kind of hanging out there, it's a little bit more in the weeds, but there may be some operating balance that the school corporation has available to help manage its overall rate. So there are still a few different options out there if the school needs debt within the next few years.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Good question. Anything else? Great, thank you.
Just a couple items to kind of bring everybody up to speed. When Mr. Vaught and Mr. Thompson came on the board, and Dr. Clendening and I arrived shortly thereafter, just a reminder, our tax rate at that time was about $1.90. Today we sit at about $1.47. And so despite the loss that we've experienced, our tax rate has actually been on the decline over a period of several years. And so it seems to us that the timing is right to do something like this, where we don't have to raise the tax rate, but rather utilize those funds in a consistent manner so that we can get done with our buildings what we need to get done. The other thing that I would remind everybody of, and I think we have lovely facilities here. We've been blessed, the community's blessed us with that. But we can't forget the fact that this building alone is 10 years old. Creekside Elementary is nearly 20 years old. Even our middle school remodel is going on 8 or 9 years. And so things break. A lot of the items that you see listed on the document that Matt and Jeff put together are actually designated for this building. Air handlers and a whole litany of things that just simply go bad. And so I at least wanted to point those out to you. With that said, if, Mr. Vaught, if you're ready, I'm ready to move on to the next item. We'll get to the budget hearing.
Go ahead, please.
Project hearing in just a moment. Wanted to take a few minutes tonight and kind of go through this with the board on the budget changes that are forthcoming. Behind the scenes, we've been working on this for months and months, and I can't even tell you the number of meetings we have collectively attended to try to get ourselves ready for this. But in a nutshell, the way that we budget and expend dollars is about to change as of January the 1st. This is a visual of the silos that our money is in right now, and that's about to be different. And so, as you know, we have general fund, and we're going to talk about it in a second, that's funded primarily through the state of Indiana, tax levied funds, which are capital projects, transportation, bus replacement, and debt service. That's our existing world at this point. Here are those funds and where they're funded from and what we basically spend money for out of each. Clearly, general fund is salaries and benefits in large part, and that's state tuition support that we've received from the state of Indiana. It used to come through property taxes. That was changed several years ago. At that point, our tax rate was actually $2.12, which is much higher, obviously, than it is now. Debt service, capital projects, transportation, and bus replacement are all funded primarily through local property taxes. And so those are items that you're very familiar with. We go through that every year. Here's the alteration as a result of House Bill 1009 and House Enrolled Act 1167. We are moving away from those funds into buckets that we'll reference at this point as education and operations. That's going to be the new vernacular. Now, I'm drawing backwards and then moving forward all at the same time. But in 2006, under House Enrolled Act 1006, we basically split our funds into 4 buckets. 1 and 2 were educational expenditures. I won't bore you with details, but in short, the state of Indiana established what they call FINMARs, and you need to, or the goal was to place at least 65% of the money into classrooms and spend less of your money on operations, which were buckets 3 and 4. As we move forward, all of those will now be housed in the education fund and operations fund. And my goal tonight is to kind of explain to you exactly how that's going to work. This is your first visual. The education fund will include all Category 1 and Category 2 expenditures, which in effect is dollars to the classroom. Primary source of revenue will be the state tuition support based on enrollment, which is exactly the same as we have right now. So state tuition support we will continue to receive. The other item, which is really probably the most significant change, is the operations fund. That was the previous CPF, transportation, bus replacement funds, and those are categories 3 and 4, not classroom expenditures, but rather for overhead. And I've listed in here for you what those categories primarily are made up of, and that includes benefits for the offices and salaries for the office of superintendent, the business manager, HR, custodian, maintenance, insurance, utilities will all be housed in the operations area, and those will be funded through local property taxes. One alteration is each of those funds, if they have not been there already, are being moved to what they call max levy. So the absolute maximum amount we can get, the state of Indiana will calculate that for us and hand it to us, which means we're going to get a little bit more money than we have gotten in the past. We are not at max levy in all of our funds. So it's what we got in 2018 plus the addition of the max levy, which I'm calculating at about $140,000, give or take just a little bit. This is what it will look like for next year, and I'm going to try to go through this so that you can kind of follow along. I hope that you can. The first row, 2018 general fund, you'll notice expenditures from our 1782 notice were $33,686,000. Revenues were $33,296,000. We had miscellaneous revenues coming in there as well that increased that a little bit, but our expenditures were $33 million. As you scroll across, and I'm going to step away for a second. As you scroll across to the expenditures in 2019, you'll notice that rather than spending $33 million, we're projecting that we're going to spend about $26,387,000. That doesn't mean that we're receiving less than we did this year. It means that some of those dollars are going to be transferred from what was the general fund into operations. As an example, right now, we pay for all of our custodial maintenance and grounds out of our general fund. That will be moved to operations as of the first of the year. And so we don't need all the money that we have in general fund as we advance forward into education. We'll be shifting. You might notice too, on the bottom row, 2018 CPF transportation bus replacement, our 1782 numbers allowed us $7.3 million. This was our revenue. Obviously, we have some miscellaneous revenue. But as we move forward into next year, we actually are going to need $14,785,000, and that will come from a transfer from what was our general fund. So down at the bottom, I've listed for you 17.73% of expenditures, or $7.299 million, in the general fund this year will be transferred to the new operations fund next year. And there are a litany of things that have to happen that I'll be guiding us through in the next several months to enable that to occur. So it's a very different look. One of the things that we want to think a little bit about is we have a board goal right now at 9% of our operating balance in general fund. That will have to change in some way because a lot of that money after the first of the year will get shifted out. So there's some other ancillary things that we'll have to probably do as well. So let me quickly take you through what's going to happen in the next couple of months. First of all, we've got a couple of board resolutions that we need to adopt. First and foremost is to create an education and operation fund, which we don't currently have. So in November, you're going to see those resolutions come in front of you to establish those and then to transfer some of the cash to be able to set up a new education and operations fund. The state of Indiana has granted us until March 1st of 19 to be able to transfer general fund cash balance to the operations fund, the amount of our choosing. We'll be talking about that as well. Other transfers will occur throughout the year. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here, but one of the things we'll have to talk about, and schools all across the state are doing this differently, we will either have to come to you monthly, quarterly, biannually, or annually and transfer monies from the education fund into operations to enable us to pay our bills and to spend money that we need to spend. Some districts are going to do it twice a year. Some are going to do it monthly. I have some thoughts, but we'll have to talk about that as we get a little bit closer, but at least wanted to make you aware of that. And that's what I'm talking about under number 4, other transfers throughout the year. Changes in budget preparation. Software has to be updated to shift expenditure accounts to new funds. God love the ladies in my office, primarily Tammy Jackson, who has been working feverishly. Not only are we doing this, but as you know, we're moving from Computrol to Skyward all at the same time. And so we have a spreadsheet about that long, and it's got all the accounts, and we're moving them, and I'm beginning to budget now in those new realities. So that's going on behind the scenes. And as always, if you have an interest in knowing or getting more information, I'm happy to sit down with you and go through that. One of the other things is, and we actually go in the next couple of days to Region 8 meeting to talk about this, but we don't actually have to budget like we've budgeted in the past. We have to list items that are capital assets with a value of $10,000 or more. We actually have very few assets that we predict in any given year that are $10,000 or more, unless you're buying a maintenance truck or something along those lines. I don't know when a boiler is going to go down or things of that nature, so we'll kind of have to manage through this. We want to be transparent with the community, but it is a little bit of a learning process. The other change that the board might recognize too is the bus replacement plan, which has historically been 12 years, and you've approved those documents at 12 years, now moves to 5. And so that makes my life maybe a little bit easier and yours as well. But those are some of the highlights for the budget transitions that are about to be made. Do you have any questions at this point? Do you know enough to even ask questions if you have it over the new budget? I'm happy to answer any if you do.
I guess, Jeff, one question. You mentioned just one member of your staff. What's the impact to your staff with this change?
Well, just a couple of things. I'll give you an example. Right now, I allocate to Matt Sprout and Technology $750,000 in hardware annually. And up until last year, Matt didn't get to spend all of that because we were trying to create some rainy day capacity in the event we got in trouble. So some of his was frozen. That's the $1.5 million loss in CPF. However, we freed Matt up to begin purchasing because he simply was getting behind. In the future, that won't happen anymore with just one account where he's spending $750,000. Basically, he would take that money, he'd buy computers for Creekside and Needham and the high school and everyone in between. As we advance, Matt will have to have an account for every single building, because the one item we haven't talked about here is federal regulation that requires us, in the form of Every Student Succeeds Act, to begin to delineate all of our expenditures by building. Now, we've done a lot of that. We account for that now, but not to the level that's going to happen. So Matt and his staff will have more work. Tammy and my entire staff will have more work, significant amounts more work, especially this first year as we begin to learn a little bit about what we need to do. It won't be an exact science. There'll be some mistakes and hiccups along the way. We haven't gotten just a great deal of direction from the State Board of Accounts. They're trying, but it's very complex for them as well. I'm confident we'll be good to go, but it's a lot of work. Example, Center Grove didn't have their expenditures broken out by building. They were lumped together. They had to create, I think Paul Gabriel said, about 2,800 new accounts. We already had them. They just changed numbers. He had to create from scratch. So we're actually in better shape than some. But anyway, that's more than you wanted, probably.
Jeff, I'm interpreting that you view this long-term as a positive direction.
I actually do. I think it will be both for our community, but also for us. I think it'll be a positive move. It's going to grant us some additional dollars because they're moving to max levy. One of the things, too, that gets hidden in all of this, you may recall that our utilities and property casualty insurance has been uncertain. They keep approving it for every 2 years in the past, and they've done that. Gosh, I don't know. These guys may know how long that's been going on, but I don't remember. That's going away, and it's permanently embedded in there. That's a good thing, too. So there's just a variety of things that I think make this good.
So perhaps my question is rhetorical, but there's an opportunity cost associated with making this change. Do we have an approximation of what it's costing the corporation to make this change?
I do not have an exact dollar amount. I can tell you the opportunity cost in terms of personnel over the last 3 or 4 months.
It's been rather significant.
It's been extremely significant to the degree that I didn't know if Tammy was coming back from vacation from this past week.
So there's a point to this.
I figured.
So as our representative attorney here this evening is also a representative on the state legislature, I think it's fair to communicate to our colleague that when these changes come about, I'm giving you guys feedback, basically. We make these changes without financial remuneration for our corporation to do this work. And so it is an additional burden on an already highly complex regulated industry. So understand that the unintended consequence of what we do is significant. And I just want you to know, walk away with, please understand the unintended consequences is significant financially to our corporation and to every other corporation. That I'm guessing, Jeff, we don't get remunerated for, or perhaps we should send a bill to the state legislation. Thank you, I'm finished. So rhetorical in nature, but it is healthy to understand that this burden, although it is in a positive direction, does cost us a significant amount of effort and money.
Yeah, it's a big undertaking. It's the first type of its undertaking in 30 years. Progress requires that kind of a commitment. Just for us, especially with the move out of CompuTrol, has made it that much more complicated. But I do think long-term this is a good thing. Any other questions that I can answer?
I might add, it's a perfect storm of many things that took place. Tried to create flexibility. Then the new federal law changed that dictated that we had to go and give every building how much we expend and the revenue. So both of those were coming at the same time. And then you throw in, for Franklin, we're changing our software system at the exact same time. So for us, it was a perfect storm of a lot of things happening at once that all fell on one department. And then the knowledge base that we had to grow to get there. So I would note that because when we go to our conferences, we get to hear both about ESSA and the state. And they try to separate the two, but for us, it's one. It really is one. So.
Yeah, and you might say, well, why didn't you just postpone the software thing? We were so far down the highway, we didn't know the others were too late. We were already in the middle of it. And so it was literally rip the Band-Aid off, here we go. And we'll get it taken care of, but it's been a job.
And again, my hopefully don't misunderstand my point, but it is important that our community understand the work that goes on way behind the scenes that we have to do in order to educate our children. So it is the cost of doing business, so to speak, and it is significant. So,
thank you. Mr. Mercer, on budget calendar. I do this for you each and every year. This one looks just a touch different than it has in the past, but not a lot different. I'm not going to go through these verbatim for you. I did want to point out, I do anticipate doing a workshop on our 2019 budget on August the 13th, which we've always done at the normal board meeting in August. There'll be a public hearing on September the 10th. And then if all goes well, we'll ask for school board adoption of the 2019 budget on October the 8th, which is well ahead of the statutory deadline of November 1st. And so then there's some other dates that are more probably germane to just taxpayers. But that's what our budget calendar looks like for this year. The one alteration is we no longer have to advertise in the paper. That will be posted on our website, and so that'll be a savings right out of the gate of a couple $1,000 since we no longer have to advertise. Thank you. So, thank you, Mr. Young, for that.
I did have a question.
I'm sorry.
You had mentioned that obviously with this new structure, we're going to have to relook at some of our goals. At what point are we going to discuss those?
I think actually, go ahead, Dr. Linden, if you want. I think some of that probably will begin next month at our board retreat.
Okay,
and,
just asking it.
Yeah. I don't know that I have definitive answers or even recommendations, but at least we can begin the conversation this year.
So Jeff, do you have enough data to translate from what you know today and the 9% to what life is going to be like and how that would theoretically transfer? Do you have an idea of what that will be?
Well, if you just did percentages of raw dollars into each fund, yes, I can do that.
Okay.
We'll have some.
So we do have a starting point.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. I think that's all I have on that one as well, unless there's any other questions. Next item is for under action items with the book rental curriculum resource.
All right. I think we need to go ahead and wrap up the hearing on project. I mean, I think that was opened up. Financial advisor gave her testimony. You gave your testimony regarding what the bond issue was needed to do in terms of, fixing buildings and everything. So I didn't know if Mr. Long had anything else to add on that, but I think we should go ahead and wrap that portion of it up. We also need to take any public comment.
So in other words, we're still under public hearing for that.
I thought we opened up the public hearing.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of did. I thought if it's okay with you, Mr. Vaught, under action item A, if we could open up the public hearing, allow for any public comment, and then maybe Eric can come up and kind of help walk us through the resolutions that we have in front of us.
Okay, so the public hearing is now open.
If it wasn't open before. Yeah.
Okay, any public comment?
And
Hearing none.
Just to clarify, this would have been regarding the bond issue and what the financial advisor presented in terms of how we got to the $5 million number and to be under cap space, and in terms of what the money is going for, which Mr. Mercer outlined for various building projects. So
Are we approving this list?
No, I will go through what the board actually is approving.
Okay, thank you.
If we're ready to move on with that.
Thanks.
So if we've closed the public hearing, I would ask Eric to join me up front to be able to answer any questions that you might have. We actually have listed one item more than we need this week or this month. Under action item II, notice to taxpayers of additional appropriation. I managed to jump the gun by 1 month. That will actually double back next month, so I'd like to table that if we could. John, do we need a formal recommendation to table that one?
The board can go ahead and table that issue.
Okay.
I don't know what the board's general procedure is for tabling it, but.
That would be general procedure.
Generally what Roger tells us to do.
Move to table AII.
Okay, it's been moved to table. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
For most of you that have been with us through the other portion of all the general obligation bonds in the past, we have a series of resolutions that we bring before you for either conversation and or approval. And that's what Eric's here to do tonight. And that's Ice Miller's function as we move through all of the legal obligations that we need to take care of. There are actually 4 that are attached to your board docket. They are Exhibit A, Project Resolution, Exhibit B, Preliminary Bond Resolution, Exhibit C, Resolution approving the prepayment of general obligation bonds of 2014, and then Exhibit D, Declaration of Official Intent to Reimburse Expenditures. And Eric is here to answer any questions you might have about those resolutions, but we will need to approve those one at a time if we could. Any questions for Eric or for any of us for that matter at this point? One of the items that I want to mention under Exhibit C, because if you didn't have this question, I did. Resolution approving prepayment of general obligation bonds of 2014. We are just a touch shy of $5 million as we advance throughout the remainder of the year. In fact, we're $5,000 shy. And so as I understand it, we have to prepay that in order to get to $5 million so that we can do the entire $5 million bond issuance. It's kind of trading dollars. So it's a small amount prepaid up front that we then in turn turn around and get right back. That's the function of Exhibit C. Eric, is there anything that you wanted to add to what I've already said?
I couldn't send it anybody.
Any questions?
Okay, so we need to approve 4 resolutions then.
Correct.
Yeah, the first item, and I have the original copies here, and we'll get everybody's signature when the meeting has concluded. But the first item is, I believe, be attached as Exhibit A, maybe to your agendas and board minutes, which is the project resolution. And this resolution establishes the estimated cost of the project, the tax impact, and the timing of the impact. So there just need to be a motion and vote, or motion and a discussion and a vote on that first.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
Move for approval.
It's been moved for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes.
Okay. Next would be Exhibit B, which is the preliminary bond resolution. And this establishes the maximum amount to be borrowed and the maximum term of repayment and the maximum interest rate.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
It's been moved to approve. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes.
And then next would be Exhibit C, and this is what Mr. Mercer just touched on. And this is the resolution approving prepayment of general obligation bonds of 2014. And this resolution approves the early payment of the January 15th, 2019 maturity of the GO bonds of 2014 in order to increase the debt capacity for issuing bonds.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes.
Okay. And finally, you would have Exhibit B, which is the declaration of official intent to reimburse expenditures. And as if the school corporation pays any preliminary costs related to the project in advance of receiving the bond proceeds, it can reserve its ability to be reimbursed from the bond proceeds after the closing.
Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval.
It's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
And then that's it. And then the next step will be at next month's meeting, you will do the appropriations resolution because you got to tell everybody where you're going to actually spend the money. And this is a little bit different, but then there will be various other advertisements going out. And I think before the next board meeting, the advertisements to issue the bond will go out. And then I think those will be awarded prior to the August meeting, but those things are all down the road.
Thank you.
And I believe I attached that calendar last month. And so Belvia and Jason have some work to do. Roger will have some work to do. Eric will continue to guide us on all the legal ramifications of the GO bond. So any last questions for any of us?
Mr. Mercer, just remind the board and the public regarding the Google spreadsheet that was created and the utilization of that, please.
We've historically done that. We have a mechanism that we use internally that Matt's a master at, where we prioritize all the things that we see in the corporation that need to be done. And we have done that. We provided that to the board last month and an updated version this month. You'll notice that some changes have been made from last month to this month, and that happens every year as we adjust where we go. One of the things that we've historically done via Eric and or Jane Herndon is to create this in a broad enough way that if things come up or change between now and say 2 years down the road, that we can adjust. We have included all locations so that we do have some latitude. I recall in the last GO bond issuance or the one before, we had a boiler go out right in the middle of things. And so we took some of those GO bond dollars and actually transferred to that purchase. Those kinds of things will be happening, and Matt alluded to that. This is a very fluid document moving forward. But certainly if you have questions as we go, we're happy to provide you any updates, and we'll stay on top of that as we move forward.
One particular question, not on a particular line item, but there are several that are time sensitive relative to this summer. And so is there a mechanism by which we're able to do that, given that all of the work that's involved with issuing the bond will preclude those monies from being issued prior to the work needing to be
Actually, I'm
done?
glad you brought that up, Mr. Thompson. And I wanted to mention this and I forgot it. You approved tonight 3 contracts with STR, who's an existing vendor of ours, in the consent agenda. And so there was hardscape design services, roof design, and wall design that were approved like we always approved things in the past. The difference is we're going to pay for these out of CPF, professional services. So we're not paying for it out of GO bond, which wasn't your question, but it kind of strikes to your question. We are moving on some things right now in anticipation. Roger indicated last month that we could reimburse ourselves. In fact, I think we passed a resolution tonight authorizing ourselves to do that. One of the items is going to be a timing situation, and Jeff can probably speak to this better than I can. I think just the natural flow of activity, likelihood is we won't be invoiced until after we receive the proceeds, and probably would be in alignment to pay it naturally anyway. Historically, we've done it in a way that was far enough ahead of summer that we had the money in hand and we could do this. This one didn't play out that way. But we do have the authority that if we wanted to do some work in the summer, we could spend money out of another fund and then reimburse ourselves. The downside with doing that out of CPF is no matter how you slice it, you still lose the appropriation. If you spend dollars, we can request an additional appropriation, but we may not need to have that happen. Fair, Jeff? Mm-hmm. But we do have the ability to do it if it turns out that we need it. Any other questions? Thank you, Jason and Belvia and Eric, for being here tonight with us and getting started on the GO bond. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mrs. Brown-Malley.
First and foremost, I am thankful I work in the curriculum and instruction area. Kudos and respect to you numbers, men and women. Bringing you for approval tonight, textbook adoption and rental. The only change that was made was the Chromebook rental fee. We had $43 last month. We were discussing splitting that cost with the parent. We went back and revisited that and decided that parents will pay the total cost of the Chromebook, and then at the end of that 4-year period, the Chromebook is the students' to keep. So that is an $86 a year cost, and that would be just for 5th graders and 9th graders next school year. Everything else remains the same. So just asking for your approval of these amounts.
It's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. And then also brought to you 2 very minor changes to Custer Baker's handbook. So we just need to vote on those 2 changes tonight. And that was just adding some language to electronic devices and uses.
Do I hear a motion? It's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, the policies.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Yes, policy. Second. Oh,
This is under action items and it says first reading.
Yeah, I wondered about that too.
Pardon?
It's a second read on here.
Okay, so this is, it's correct up there?
yes,
Okay.
we did do these last month.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Regarding policies, we have Roman numeral 1 through Roman numeral 9. Looking at these, and these were really just coming back to with compliance issues with regard to the state and that. So that's what we're just asking for adoption at this time.
It's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is under discussion items for the Union Township Recycling Services. The easement at Needham has been taken off
Yeah.
the agenda.
Good evening. A few weeks ago, Katie Sparks approached me about hosting a recycling drop-off location at Union Elementary. Elgin Martin and Katie are here to talk to you a little bit about that proposal and answer your questions.
Hi, my name is Katie Sparks, and this idea stemmed from a Leadership Johnson County application I was doing on projects to improve our community. I have lived in Union Township most of my life and drive my recycling to Franklin, and so the idea stemmed from having local center for us that's not driving to Greenwood. A lot of times those facilities are locked or they're overflowing, and there's just not really good options for recycling in Union Township. So I started brainstorming ideas and started talking to people, and Elgin Martin with Indy Roll-Offs jumped on board with me, and so there you go.
Yes, we started this roll-off business about a year ago, and ever since then, going to the landfill, I keep seeing just all kinds of stuff that does not need to be there that we can reuse. So I had started thinking of ways of doing this, especially for our community. And then I saw that Katie's post, so that's when I got on board with her. But living in Union Township, most of my life also, my family lives all there. We saw that as a good place for this program for our company to start. It's local, help our kids out that both go to Union. But basically what we're wanting to do, already at that site, you guys have a paper recycling through another company, and you have your trash service. But we're limited in our plastics, cans, glass, and cardboard. Plastics and cardboards are the big ones. I mean, they compose so much of our trash that we need to find a better outlet for it. With my company, we have the industry standard large roll-off dumpsters, but we also have smaller ones. They are about 40% in size of the other ones, and they're delivered on a much smaller truck. So we believe this is a great way to start this pilot program with our little trucks. They do less damage to the asphalt. They're smaller in size. They don't take up near as much parking spaces. So we're working to change our dumpsters a little bit so we can segregate all of these different projects. We're wanting to set one dumpster strictly for cardboard because they take up the most space. And we will have another dumpster that's separated for the plastic, glass, cans, and we're maybe working on a couple others. But basically, the way we're wanting to set this up is, we're going to assume all the cost. When I first started doing this, I was just going to do it strictly for whatever I can get out of the recyclables when I sell it. When we brought Katie along in with this, we decided we wanted to give back to Union or Franklin. So we're willing to give back. I believe in our proposal, we put 10% back to I don't know if you want to make it a board decision or a union principal decision on where does that money goes. But that 10% will be, after any fees and trucking costs we have to the recyclers. I believe in the agreement. We've made this. Katie lives really like a mile or two away. I live a mile or two away. I mean, we're both going there almost every day. So as our company, we're going to be responsible for any illegal dumping, making sure the site's clean, proper signage, and just making sure it's a great experience for the whole community. We're open to any other questions you may have.
So is there a setup that you require or an additional expense for that site prep
No,
before you
Franklin
put
will
your
not.
dumpsters on there?
Franklin will not assume any expense. It'll all be on our dollar.
So thank you for that, but is there still, you guys got to put down a cement pad or something that we would have to prepare for in that parking lot? Is there some modification that's required to support this?
Our dumpsters are small and lightweight, so we're going to set it straight on the asphalt. As when we set our dumpsters for residential or anything else, we usually put boards under for the asphalt to protect it in the hot months. We will do the same on this.
Okay.
Well, thank you. That's very nice proposal.
Thank you.
So were you asking for permission for approval?
We just included that as a discussion item this time, so we could put it on the agenda for July
Okay.
as an action item.
So has the proposal been run through?
Roger has looked at it. One of the things we are looking at is the cancellation terms of the agreement. The current draft provides for a 60-day advance written notice. I think we're looking at something shorter than that and open to your thoughts on what that number should be.
The only, well, I don't have a thought on that, but the only comment I would have, and this is not in no way I don't want you to do this. It's making sure we understand and think through what the unintended consequences are, whether that be additional pests, rodents, whatever would naturally come along with that. I would just ask that you think through those things and figure out how we're going to manage that moving forward.
Yep. We have already discussed a number of changes and specifications in the agreement to kind of make sure that they're responsive if we have any type of concern with the operation of the site.
And curiously, how far away is it from the building?
It's almost right at the road. It's right existing as you come in that drive, not the front drive, but that would be the south drive.
It's on the south side on the.
You got the dumpsters come first, and then in the far corner is where the existing paper recycling bin sits. There's a couple of parking spaces there we would lose for that.
I would just ask you, just think through this. I don't know that you need to report those back, just knowing that you're at least asking those questions.
Yep. We'll plan to bring a final agreement to you next month.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is under board administrative comments. Dr. Clendenning, the Safety and Security Meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vaught.
annually, we provide a safety conversation with the community, and tradition has it, it's usually in the spring. We've been doing it in April. We've hosted it at Webb. We've been to Custer Baker. We've also been here. I think we went to Custer Baker one time, but anyway, I know we did Webb and here at the high school. In lieu of everything that's taken place, a lot of the safety questions that are coming about, I'd like to recommend that we move that to the fall. And I think there are a couple of things that really play to that for us. One, with the feasibility study that's coming forward, and we have that before us, that will give us a chance to have a conversation with the community on safety. A lot of the findings are coming out from the tragedies of Noblesville and what's going on. And we'll also have an opportunity as we go to gather our safety plans for you to review, any additional thoughts or whatever that may need to play out before we go to executive session and prove those. So the thought would be to move it into September, right after school starts. Location would still be here at the high school. I believe it's the most accommodating, and it would allow for that. And we would look at issues like mental health and look at how we would respond to immediate responses. I would add, as a note, Thought Exchange, we just got our feedback today at about 2 o'clock. And one of the overwhelming things that the Thought Exchange told us about our district was people were very complimentary of our safety and communication compared to the other Thought Exchange corporations that they participate with. They felt like we do a good job reporting, but there's still a lot of things we can do, and that's what we'll be doing. So wanted to touch base with the board. I think Christy has been there, and we went to the Webb one and that was right after Sandy Hook. I know we had board members there. We did it at the middle school too, yep. So just wanted we'll look at your calendars. I'm looking at the second or third week in September. Come after Labor Day, and then we'll have a board meeting and be right after that.
I think it's great. I think it's a great idea to move it up. Do we need to earmark any money for whatever recommendations might come out for this?
It's a good question. We have flexibility in the way we wrote the GEO bond. If anything were to come out that you would want to direct us to do that, we could do that.
Okay.
I did. There's a couple of things on there. You'll notice, like online, for a security system upgrade. It's ranking number 4. Also, PA system we listed as PA/security. We provided some big opportunities in there. We also had cameras last time from looking at that with Mr. Lamb, and then we did make some modifications and reduced, if you'll notice on there, we took all the way out the Chromebook purchase to provide flexibility.
As your preparation for that meeting, I think it would make sense, and I guess, Jeff, this really falls in your world, is an audit of our current safety systems, whether it be cameras, doors, whatever those are. And I think we need to make that audit more of a part of a maintenance program to ensure, because I do recall, this has been 4 or 5 years back, where it wasn't a safety issue, but it was a theft issue, and that camera wasn't working. So I think in today's environment, we can't afford to have a comment, that camera is not working, right? So whatever appropriate due diligence from a maintenance and an audit perspective needs to be formalized and a system put in place to ensure that, I think to me makes a lot of sense in preparation for that early fall meeting. Now, obviously, there are things that I think are sensitive in terms of what we're willing to communicate. So obviously, we're going to take your lead on that as more experts than what we are. But I do think that having that audit and preventive maintenance package in place for our safety systems is probably a prudent thing to do.
Mr. Thompson, we did speak with Lancer and Beebe when we met with them to kick off the feasibility, and we brought that to their attention to address that for us. So we'll be getting feedback. They did ask for all the blueprints and different things from Mr. Sewell, so we'll be in contact. And they do have an outside firm that they use.
So I think these are two different issues, and they're kind of commingling, but they are two separate things. One is looking at some deficiencies that may be in place from an outside expert perspective. And then the second one is what I was more alluding to, is the systems that we have in place, are they maintained properly? And do we have a robust maintenance plan in place for those systems? So they commingle, but they are separate issues of what Lancer and Beebe, because they're not going to look at our current maintenance procedures or our current security procedures to make sure that those are valid. And they're not going to look at the maintenance plan on our cameras to make sure they're valid, right? So that's not what I wouldn't think so. Now, maybe the security expert might, but I think at least putting that on the table is, I believe, really warranted.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So if we move this out till September, do we have the opportunity to take a survey now through our website for topics of discussion that, you guys do a great job on pulling together the panel and here's the items we're going to talk about, but is there something the community would like to cover that maybe we haven't, right? And so if we've got till September, do we have the time to pull those people together?
Absolutely. So we can use Thought Exchange to do that very thing for us.
Well, that's a valid point, because we did hear one comment tonight that really points to causal factors, root cause issues that these other things aren't root cause, right? They're layers of protection.
Right.
And so having some of those comments about causal factors that we can influence, I think that would be a pretty positive way, at least putting those on the table.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next item is for the FCHS Alumni Hall of Fame. Mrs. Ott?
Okay, well, I am very happy to announce this year's class of Alumni Hall of Fame for 2018. We had a lot of good nominees, but our committee chose these 4 people for this year. The first one is Robert Claxton from the class of 1972, Alva Neal from the class of 1888, Nancy Pointer from the class of 1958, and Karen Stellick from the class of 1978.
What was the last name?
Stellick? It used to be Wenning. Karen Wenning. And I believe that Mr. Jones may have a little bit of background he'd like to share about Alva Neal for us if we have a minute, because Mr. Jones is our local historian. He knows it all, which is wonderful.
Or whoever doesn't know me, my name's Ray Jones. I'm a former administrator and teacher in Franklin Schools for 44 years. But I've had a real interest in history and local history after retired, so I spent a lot of time at the Johnson County Museum. And somebody, I think it might have been Pam Milliken, when this project started, called me and said, do you know of any people in the past? Well, my past with Franklin only went back to 1964, but you get in the museum and start looking at old newspaper articles, and one of the questions that came up for me was one that came to mind, and I did nominate him, and he made it the first year, was Roger Brannigan, our former governor. But then, the high school on Jefferson Street, when it was a high school, was the Alva Neal High School. I had no idea who that was, so I started researching and ended up nominating him. And of course, he didn't make it all those years, so I was surprised a couple of weeks ago when I got a letter from I said, what is Franklin Community School sending me something? And it was, hey, Alva Neal made it. But the thing I wanted to point out that I didn't put in the recommendation, the newspaper articles I corrected, is in studying Franklin over the years from the 1800s has, back in the early days, they did name schools after people. There's a Kitty Palmer School, and there's a plaque over on Monroe Street named after her. And And Alva Neal, but she was not a graduate. Custer Baker went to Union. He did not graduate from Franklin High School. The Booker T. Washington School. Well, Booker T. Washington did not attend Franklin schools. So I think, to the best of my knowledge, Alva Neal is the only Franklin High School graduate that a Franklin school was named after. Now, there may be some other graduates at other schools, but not in Franklin. So I think and I did not put that in the thing. So I knew I was going to be in Indiana this week, and I saw it on the agenda. So I think I'll stop by and say hi to all the people I know and point that out, that it's a little unique that there's only the one school that's named after a person that graduated from Franklin High School in Franklin. So
Thank you.
Tidbit.
That won't, by the way.
We sure miss you.
Okay, the next item is for public comments, and so this could be on any issue that anybody would like to comment on. It didn't have to be on the agenda.
My only comment or concern, and I'm just making a public comment, and that is looking at the proposed or the initial proposal changes to 2019 budget, is the expenditures for transportation bus being at 14.7 and then revenue only being 7.4. Is there an unintended circumstance sitting there of us having to make changes because we're not going to be able to? And I'm just not asking for, to me as a parent, that's a concern. Because my kids deal with the buses, my kids deal with different programs, and they're not always part of in-school education, what would be considered that. And this school has done countless of ways, and I'm being involved in the 500 festivals I am, seeing other schools, visiting other schools through the fourth grade education program. I'm glad my kids are here. And I'm worried that the changes is going to start having to make changes elsewhere. And hopefully we have ways of making sure that doesn't happen.
It's a really good question, and I'm glad you brought it up because it gives us a highlight into things that people don't quite understand. Shoot, I'm not even sure I do all the time. So we will spend $14 million out of, and you alluded to it, bus replacement, transportation, capital projects in this year's world. Next year it'll be operations. What we have to do beginning at or about the first of the year, and then, as I mentioned, either monthly or bi-annually or annually, is we will transfer dollars from what used to be our general fund, will now be education, into operations. So when you look at that 14 million and 7 million, there's going to be another 7 million pumped into that. So actually, and this is the bonus, our budgets go up next year because of the max levy. But that's an excellent question. They're not going down. They'll at least stay the same. And I think by about 140,000, it'll go up.
The other thing on Needham's intention for recycling, I would like all elementary schools to have something. Creekside is where my kids go to or have gone to, and we had a bio club for years that did the cans thing. They didn't do it this year. And now, not that we go through cans a lot at my house, but it was a nice way to give back to the school, and they didn't have it. And fortunately, I have a friend that I work with that uses them or does something with them. But can we grow this because trust me, when my kids went to Custer Baker and they had been doing that for those many years, and then the 2 years or 3 years they were there, they were like, we didn't have that program. There was no place for us to do the recycling. So there is a movement, not pushing too much, but there's a desire for it.
Well, you got to remember, Union is on the west coast of the Franklin Community Schools. And so recycling's bigger on the west coast. So.
Wow.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Okay, very interesting. I guess my next question, I have a ton of questions, but I won't take up everybody's night. Just, is there a budget for just safety? Because I hear you guys up here talking about a lot of budgets, and is there a breakdown to where parents can see, what's going where, and if there's more ideas to be heard, or does that make any sense? I mean, where would I find that? I guess is my question.
Ask Jennifer, what meeting agendas has, whenever they have the budget stuff comes up, it's in there also. I look at it too, and security has been something I look at also.
Okay.
Let me make sure I understand your question. Are you asking if there's a set aside specific budget bucket for security?
Exactly.
I don't believe we've approached it that way, no.
Okay.
Those tend to be embedded in a variety of budgets. There are safety items. A lot of it'll exist in capital projects. And so in the natural course of what Matt would do with security cameras or things of that nature, that would be housed in that bucket. Jeff manages some security dollars as well that go for a variety of things. And then, of course, what you saw tonight with the general obligation bond, there are some safety items in there as well.
Okay. And then just the next question, I mean, what can I do as a parent to help? Because I see that you guys sit here and you make a lot of the decisions and, with your team, but just as a parent, what can I do to help?
Well, the first thing I'd say is please come to the meeting that we have in September. We're going to get information out to everybody. We want to hear from the parents on that. And then from those items, Mr. Thompson is right. The state of Indiana put security under executive discussion so that everybody wouldn't hear about it. And so all of our plans can't come out. However, as a parent, keep coming to those meetings. Come be a part of the conversations. If you have a great idea, let us know the great idea.
Okay.
And then it'll be our job to take it back to look at capital projects and equipment. How can that play out? And then seek out board's approval and conversation.
Okay.
Obviously, there's a lot of reports that are coming out on how to be proactive. One of the things that we have entered in, and we talked about this, are school safety resource officers. For this year, we have one back at the high school.
Yeah.
In January, they're going to have one at the high school and one at the middle school. And then the plan is hopefully by 2020, we'll have a third one with us. So those are some things that we can definitely be a part of in the conversation. But if you have ideas, please let us know.
Okay. Will do.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, she's a West Coaster.
Huh? What? What'd you say?
I just said you're from the West Coast. You made that.
Oh, sorry. Just a couple of things I wanted to add because Elgin and I weren't completely prepared to speak. But we've had a lot of positive feedback from the community members, not just Union families, but just Union Township and Bargersville residents behind the recycling project. There's a Union Township, and this is where Elgin found out I was kind of working on it and tag teamed with me. There's a Union Township Facebook group, and that's where I had said, hey, I'm working on this recycling program. Would anyone utilize this? And the amount of positive feedback we got was just awesome. And also, Elgin and I both have children that go to Union, and so we have talked amongst ourselves just about the opportunity for service learning with our students, and what a great opportunity that we can teach these kids. Not only are they collecting bottle caps and milk caps, but the amount of recyclable materials that go into trash cans that we can use as an opportunity for the students. So I just wanted to throw in those two tidbits. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Mr. Thompson?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.